Welcome back. The Museum of Jewish Heritage is dedicated to educating a diverse audience about Jewish life across the Holocaust and beyond. Their new exhibit, Courage to Act, Rescue in Denmark, honors a remarkable episode of mass resistance from 80 years ago. Through archival materials, photos, recordings, testimonials, and artifacts, the exhibit recounts the extraordinary story of 7,000 refugees and the support they received from Danish and Swedish communities, showcasing one of the most effective acts in resistance in modern history. Joining us now is the president and CEO of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, Jack Kliger. Jack, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Kibin. Very nice to speak to you.
Same here. Now, the Courage to Act Rescue in Denmark exhibition explores the incredible story of the Danish rescue during the Holocaust. Can you provide a brief overview of this exhibition and its significance?
Sure. Denmark in 1940 was invaded and occupied by Germany and was able to operate as its own government under the king as long as they abided by the rules that the Germans put into place, particularly about not making war on them and providing them with all their raw materials and things that Denmark could provide. What happened was that as part of that deal or part of that agreement, the Danish Jewish population of roughly 8,000 was not separated, segregated, or deported, which was unique. But by 1943, the situation had gotten more confrontational, and there was a significant Danish resistance in August of 1943. And that's when the Germans decided that they would go into a more aggressive action and were preparing to deport the entire Danish Jewish population. Word leaked out that this was going to happen, and the Jewish community, along with the resistance community, a tremendous number of segments of the Danish society, including the church, were very involved in a collective action to evacuate and rescue the Danish Jewish population from Denmark. And in the course of 30 days in October of 1943, a massive effort combining police, fire people, government officials, doctors, ordinary citizens, and especially the Danish fishing fleet coordinated to evacuate 95% of the Danish Jewish population to neutral Sweden, which had expressed a willingness to accept them. And they did this in the course, as I said, of 30 days. And almost none of them were captured. And so that population was moved and survived the war. So it's one of the great stories of collective action and mutual aid in history, and it's not that well known. So we, the institution of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, had been donated, were given from the government of Denmark a while ago, one of the few remaining rescue boats that was in the operation. It's called the Gerda 3, and they donated it to us, and it's still the only Danish rescue boat still afloat in North America. It's housed up at the Mystic Seaport where it's maintained. But from that boat and that story, we decided that we wanted to make an exhibition that told the story of what people could do, not what so many people did not do. And it was also a story of collective action as well as individual action. And we especially decided we wanted to do a storyline that explained history to a younger group than we traditionally had worked with. We always usually have high school students, ages 13 to 15, coming through our exhibitions. But in this case, we created an exhibition that was able to be viewed by those as young as 9. So it's for those 9 and above rather than those 13 and above. And so we've been planning it for quite a while. We think it's an inspirational story. And we did it not only with proper scholarship and research, but we also incorporated the input of a lot of young kids into the making of the exhibition. So we had a children's advisory board.
Now, I'm so glad that you mentioned this because, as you mentioned, it's a story that not too many people have heard about. And I also think it's amazing that because it's not something that's heard about often, you're letting younger audiences as young as 9 learn about this. How do you kind of, I guess, process the material or like make it something that young children could ingest? Because I know this is like a very heavy topic. So,
Yeah,
how do you guys do that and so that they can learn, but it's not too overwhelming?
yes, we incorporated a couple of different techniques. One, we used holographic images of young people telling the story. We created 3 composite characters based on real life characters, one teenager, 2 teenagers, and a 9-year-old, 10-year-old boy. And we had the scripts prepared through their storylines, and we filmed them, and we even had children review the script. So we made it, we think, very children friendly but explainable. And we also designed the exhibit considering children's height, the sight lines, their ability to interact, and the scripts. And then what we did was we hired an artist specifically who is an artist for young children who had recently done a book about Anne Frank with new illustrations. So we think our illustrations, our holographics, our scripts, and our actual techniques are very friendly for 9 to 12-year-olds. And so far, the response has been very positive in that sense. But we made it something that even if they bring their parents can understand it. But it really is storyline and descriptions that are specifically very workable for 9 to 12-year-olds.
Now, how does the exhibition showcase the bravery and resilience of the Danish and Swedish communities who played a crucial role in saving thousands of lives? And as mentioned, we don't often hear about these communities when we talk about the Holocaust or learn more about it. So, can you tell us a little bit or expand a little bit more on that?
Yes, in addition to our 3 composite characters, we take 5 real life characters who participated in the rescue. And we take verbatims from them, their actual testimonies, but also tell the story of how they participated. They were both Jewish and non-Jewish participants, and the heroine, one of the key heroines, is the woman named Henny Sindig, a real life character, who helped do the rescues on Gerda 3 and who was very familiar with the waterways because her father was the head of the Danish buoy and lighthouse service. And she was a member of the resistance, and she organized the escape just in the month of October 1943 of over 300 people. And a lot of the storyline is told through the lens of her experience, her comments, and her descriptions. We also have many other people involved, but we do tell it as the story through the eyes of specific individuals who were there and who had experienced that and who are our narrators in effect.
Now, the interactive nature of the exhibition incorporates archival materials, photographs, recordings, and testimonials, which all sound very engaging. And I could imagine that whenever we're, just learning about history, making it a little bit more engaging is like a great way for people to learn and for the information to stick, especially with younger audiences. How do these elements come together to create a meaningful and immersive experience for visitors?
Well, there are about there are 8 rooms altogether that you go through. In at least half of the rooms are interactive elements like holographic images of one of our 3 composite characters who describe separate parts of the actions from their perspective, from the lens of a 9-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 16-year-old. Then, in addition, there are elements within the rooms where people get to actually pick up the phone and talk to one of the rescuers, or they ring a bell and one of the resistance fighters opens up and describes what was being done. So it's like live narrators describing the events. And then probably the most impactful room is the room where we do a replica of the boat mounted on the wall, 30 feet long, and we show a film alongside of it that describes the whole process of how people were smuggled out at night, waited to get on the boat, had to make a very difficult crossing, were often boarded by German patrol boats and wound up getting to safety in Sweden. And it takes people through the journey from a video projection perspective and makes them actually feel almost like they're on the boat, even if they're not.
Now, the Danish rescue is a powerful testament to collective action during a time of injustice. How does this historical event relate to a broader theme of social justice, and what lessons can we draw from it in addressing contemporary issues?
Well, we took a lot of time in trying to figure out the name of the exhibit, and we came upon the name The Courage to Act. And we feel it's very important for people, even as young as 9, to understand that while it's important to have remembrance and to do acts of remembrance, it's very important to stand up and do the right thing and remember to act. And that's the formative phrase is Henny Sindig said, it was the right thing to do, so we did it. And we bring that throughout the exhibit. And we also end the exhibit with a line from the Torah that says, if you save one life, you help save the world. So we think we give lessons that it's not only enough to understand history, but to stand up when you see injustice, to be an upstander, not a bystander. And so we think this is a very important lesson that this exhibit underscores.
Now, can you tell us more about the accessibility initiatives and how the museum aims to make this important exhibition available to diverse audiences?
Sure. The majority of our, first of all, in terms of accessibility, we are obviously ADA compliant. Because of the nature of many of our visitors over the years, we are very good with access and audio assistance and those elements. But in addition, we think that the majority of our visitors to the exhibit, the majority of our student visitors are non-Jewish visitors. And we think that's very important because this is a universal lesson that should be learned. It was very important in the story to emphasize that the Danish church, which is Lutheran, was very engaged in this rescue effort. The Bishop of Denmark, based in Copenhagen, wrote a letter that objected to the Germans' plans to separate and deport the Jews. That letter was then taken by religious students to 95% of the Danish churches and read aloud on that Sunday. And the members of the Danish Lutheran Church were very involved in this rescue. So I think it's a universal lesson of standing up for your fellow men. The Danes didn't consider the people who they were rescuing Jews first and Danes second. They felt they were all Danes and they had to help their fellow man. That's a very valuable lesson.
Now, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because with the current prevalence of issues related to discrimination and hate, how does the Courage to Act address the critical need to reach younger generations and inspire them to be agents of positive change in their communities?
Well, again, what we want is we want children to come away from this exhibit learning that there were people who did the right thing and stood up for their neighbors, and that you should know that you have to consider making moral judgments. And even at 9 years old, we think that's a valuable lesson to do. So we believe that we show not only by example, but by real storytelling what people could do. And in turn, we want younger people to discuss that. What's the right thing to do, and should you do the right thing, and how do you do the right thing? So we think we're onto a good track with this.
And, I'm curious, would you say this is also a great opportunity for, maybe parents who visit the museum with their children to kind of have this hard discussion? Because I know that a lot of times parents want to shield their children from kind of, being exposed to a world where, unfortunately, a lot of discrimination and hate happens. So can you talk about maybe how this could be a great conversation starter for a lot of families?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot, yes, because first of all, we want children to come there with their parents and even their grandparents. I'm a grandparent, and I would love to have my grandchild come through with me. She's unfortunately 5 years old, but the exhibit will probably be there then. But the reality is, there is no avoiding the issues that face the world. There's an overabundance of information, images, and everything that children can see and do see. And so there's no way of shielding people anymore. You just have to give them the lessons of how you think they should understand the world, and to start to understand what you want to do and how you want to live your life. You really have to understand history, because there's so much ignorance of history that we think that putting out good information is what we can do to fight bad information. And the fact is, there's a lot of that out there, but you cannot avoid it. You must face it.
Now, beyond the exhibition, what other educational initiatives and programs does the Museum of Jewish Heritage undertake to preserve and share the history of Jewish life before, during, and after the Holocaust?
Well, we have created a lot of programs to take students through the exhibits about the Holocaust, high school students. And now what we're doing is we're training younger people, college students and college graduates, to be the educators. We always used to have gallery educators who were docents, but we think peer-to-peer education now becomes more important. So we've created something called the HESP program, Holocaust Education Educator Student Program, in which 20 and 22-year-olds, young people who are in college or just out of college, get trained on how to teach about the Holocaust and then go into local school communities. And each person that we have trained in HESP has taught over 500 students a semester. So we think that's a very good plan to do. We want peer-to-peer education on this important chapter of history.
Where can people go to learn more or how they can interact with this exhibit?
Well, they can learn more by coming on our website. We have a lot of information about it. And then they can come down to see the exhibit. We're open on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and we are anxious to have people come view it. But go on our website, mjhnyc.org, and it'll tell you an awful lot about it.
All right, well, Jack, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this really important discussion.
Well, thank you very much, Kibin. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Same here. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.